Jessie McNeil lives at Bruernish in the north of Barra, where her family runs a salmon farm. Why are you yourself involved in organising the community work in Barra?
Well, my work with the Council of Social Service is directly that, to identify a need in the community, whether it's a need, say, for the elderly or for the young people, and to encourage people to come forward to do something and to meet that need. I work in a small porter cabin in Castleby, along with 2 others, and what we do, we provide an information service there. We also produce a weekly newspaper, Vatersay. Vatersay is the Gaelic for the voice of Barra, and that's what we try and make the paper. I feel a very strong reason for doing this kind of work is that Christianity to me is the right of every person to have a decent life, to have access to information that they need in order to achieve that type of life. I think we're all equal under the eyes of God, but without information some are more equal than others.
And what difference does being involved in this make to you and to your Christianity?
It strengthens my faith when I see how much people are prepared to do without payment or without reward in order to improve their own lives, but also the lives of the people round about them.
Can you tell me about the hymn you've chosen?
Spirit of God in the Clear Running Water. I've chosen that hymn because I feel it is very appropriate for the life we lead here, and that we must adapt to the weather conditions and to the lifestyle that we have. And very often when the wind blows, it really does blow here.
Hector and Katie McNeil live near Castle Bay.
I work part-time in the Isle of Barra Hotel in the evenings. I look after my family. I help my husband in his business. I do all his paperwork.
Well, so many nights a week I take the bread into Barra, deliver it to the shops. Could get a telephone call in the morning. I've got to turn out, be a postman. Once a week I take a library van around the island so that the old folks around the island can make use of it. In a community like Barra, you've got to adapt to do many things from day to day.
What's special about Barra to you?
I think it's the peace and the quiet of the place. We really don't think much about it. It's when you go onto the mainland and you see the hustle and the bustle, and everybody seems to be pushing each other and looking over each other's shoulders just to see who's coming behind. Or we don't have to worry about things like that on the island.
I mean, you don't lock a car, you don't lock your door, your family can go anywhere. You're not so worried that anything will happen to them. And that's basically it.
What about the closeness of the island community? I mean, perhaps an outsider might think that it was a little nosy almost sometimes.
Very often incomers do say that, but they miss a point because islanders are very close to each other. They care for each other, and we share each other's problems.
And the islanders' care for one another was shown about 2 years ago when Hector nearly died in an accident.
I depended an awful lot on the help of the community at that time to keep this business going. There was lads who did the work, just came and offered their help every day, and just basically to make life easier. You just depend on one another. Faith helped an awful lot. I think your faith we take for granted until something like that happens. And that's when you realise how important faith and prayer is to you, because you turn to God in time of need.
And that's really what the hymn you've chosen is all about?
Yes, the hymn I've chosen, it's a Gaelic hymn. It's called Dolabach Lieste.
It's God give me your hand, and in the hours of need we all stretch out a hand to God for help.
Our prayers are led by Father Callum McClellan, the parish priest.
We are very conscious of the sea here. The sight and the sounds are never far from us. We respect its strength and are grateful and thankful for its riches. It supports our homes and gives a measure of security, and yet it can be mean and destructive of that very security. A raging, heaving sea is a majestic sight, but it is terrifying in its awesome power. Because of that, we become much more aware of our own helplessness and weakness. It makes us pray to a powerful, living God who created this great mass of living waters from which we get so much of our wealth. Let us pray. Thanks be to the Lord Jesus Christ for the many gifts thou hast bestowed upon me, each day, each night, each sea, each land, each weather fair, each calm, each wild. I am giving you worship with my whole life. May God shield me, may God keep me, may God fill me, may God watch me. May God bring me to the land of peace, to the country of the King, to the peace of eternity. Gebed je gedje ulachwach geschief en dahad agus samach agus the spirit love. Amen.
Sample a tour with a difference. It's a week-long trip which starts in Glasgow and heads north to Inverness before crossing to the Outer Hebrides and Skye. We picked it up on the third day in Ullapool. Early morning in Ullapool. The fishing fleet seems to have gathered at the quay to watch a 1963 Leyland Leopard straight out of a museum of classic buses roll onto the ferry bound for the Western Isles.
This is a coach tour with a difference. The coaches are from the 1950s, 60s and 70s, and they're specially suited to the leisurely touring around the nooks and crannies of the Highlands and Islands. At the moment, I'm on the ferry going to Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. It's a journey of about 3 hours, and in this way that's long enough.
On the way to Lewis, the hardy who've braved the open deck are rewarded by the sight of a Russian factory ship. Provided Lewis hasn't been blown away, the ferry will enter the harbour at Stornoway, the largest town in the Outer Hebrides. Soon you're on the open road. By today's standards, the seats are almost like armchairs. David Dean is tour guide as well as driver.
I hope you're all prepared. 2 hours before you get to the next toilet stop. So I hope you're prepared to use your initiative if you haven't.
Public loos are few and far between in this part of the world, and some locals don't worry about their curb drill. Because the coaches are high, you see far more than you would from a car, although at this point there's not much more to look at than peat bog. It's worth having a pair of Wellingtons at the ready when you visit the Callanish standing stones. The columns are believed to be more than 3,500 years old, and in the British Isles are second only in age and importance to Stonehenge.
See, that's when the wind blows it up. Gilroy, yeah.
The road is straight as an arrow all the way to the northern tip of the island.
Don't forget, please, when you get back in, can you give your feet a good sugar on the mat at the front of the coach? Otherwise, the inside of the coach will very rapidly change colour and smell. Thank you very much.
It's only a short walk across the cliffs to the butt of Lewis, where the rocks are battered by the Atlantic. Not the best place for a swim unless you happen to be a seal. You won't see anything more dramatic on the tour than this. We're back on the road again, and the scenery is changing all the time. 1 minute, we're in the heather. The next, weaving our way across a landscape which looks like the moon. David is almost as much a one-off as his bus. He likes to be known as the Lone Ranger. His bear prefers to be called Ted. At Clockrapool, remote even by Hebridean standards, the Campbell family are key members of the Harris tweed industry.
It's a single ply we do the washing.
It isn't stranded?
No.
The family have been weaving here for more than 100 years. You can follow the process right through to the finished garment. In the boathouse next door, Marion Campbell, now in her 80s, has been weaving the traditional way for most of her life, often working late into the night. She's been operating the same loom since 1919, uses only natural dyes, and is the proud holder of a British Empire Medal. From one of the oldest industries to one of the newest, Helen Creswell's Lewis Bear stories were the inspiration behind this venture, making teddy bears. Here they turn out every child's favourite toy in tweed and tartan. It's a real cottage industry, giving a boost to the island's economy. Harris also has miles of pure sand beaches, deserted too, although that could have something to do with the temperature. Walking here is bracing, let alone a swim. Most people arrive in the Hebrides by ferry, some having flown to Inverness and then hired a car. Dan Air operates 3 direct flights a day from London Heathrow and a less frequent service from Gatwick. The flying time is around 1.5 hours, and the lowest fare is £75 return for a weekender ticket, available outbound on certain flights on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, returning on Sunday, Monday or Tuesday. If you drive yourself, the foreignness of the Hebrides confronts you immediately.
When you come off the ferry, you're faced with signs like this, Stornoway in Gaelic, About 2 years ago, road signs were changed to Gaelic only in an effort to preserve the language, and it can be very confusing. So I strongly recommend that you buy a dual language map like this.
This old established family hotel at Tarbert makes a good touring base. Expect to pay around £20 a night each for bed and breakfast, with a small reduction for stays of 5 days or more. This being Scotland, the hotel is well stocked with malt whisky, more than 70 brands all told, some on display in the residence bar. Meals are taken in a spacious dining room, where the emphasis is on good home cooking. The 26 bedrooms are simply furnished, but many do have private baths or showers. Back on the coach, and we've reached the Isle of Skye.
In the distance, dead ahead, is Flora MacDonald's monument. You know all about Flora
The great thing
MacDonald.
about being on a coach tour is that everything's done for you. We don't need to worry about map reading, and in this case David takes care of the driving and makes sure you don't miss anything en route.
There's a black house, a smithy shop, the weaving shed. Gives you an idea how they lived here in the last century. There were about 30,000 people left here in the middle of the last century. When you've seen that, if you're interested, you can go up ahead there to Flora MacDonald's grave and monument. You know all about Flora MacDonald by now. I nearly forgot to tell you, there's a prize of 2 Jaffa cakes for anyone that can remember the inscription on the monument, Flora MacDonald's famous inscription.
It was 10 quid last year.
I've destitute there.
And it wouldn't surprise me if there was someone on board who could tell him what the prize was 2 years before that.
The Hebrides are so different from the mainland, it's like being abroad. For the independent traveller, there are lots of bed and breakfast places, but the choice of hotels and restaurants is limited. The food is good and excellent value for money. As for the weather, well, the locals say that May and June are the best months, and the rest of the year, well, you can get 4 seasons in just one day, so be prepared.
That 7-day coach tour of the Western Isles, which begins and ends in Glasgow, cost £255, and the price includes accommodation and half board, but not, of course, the cost of getting to and from Glasgow. Well, just before we go, another quick word about holidays in 1989. Some of the big companies are already cutting their prices, John.
Oh yes, they're desperate to get in the bookings this month and in February, and I think you could interpret